They say every empire falls, but what if one refuses to? What if the crown, instead of slipping, keeps shining brighter with every scandal, every heartbreak, every lyric that turns into a global anthem? Because in the glittering, chaotic universe of pop culture, one name refuses to fade: Taylor Swift. Yes, the woman who turned diary entries into platinum records, heartbreak into billion-dollar tours, and vulnerability into one of the most unbreakable brands in modern music history. So the question everyone's whispering, would Taylor Swift's reign ever end? Or are we watching the rise of a dynasty that's simply too self-aware, too calculated, and too magnetic to crumble? Welcome to a story of power, precision, and pure pop brilliance, the empire of Taylor Swift. Let's start with something wild. We are living in an age where Taylor Swift isn't just an artist, she's an economy. Her Eras tour alone injected over $4.6 billion into the global economy. Cities literally lobbied to host her concerts. Hotels filled up months in advance. Airlines adjusted routes. And small businesses sold out of everything from sequin dresses to friendship bracelets. The Taylor effect isn't fan talk. It's an actual measurable economic phenomenon. And yet somehow she's managed to make it all look effortless. That's not luck. That's legacy building at its sharpest. Taylor Allison Swift was never just in the game. She studied it, dissected it, and rewrote the rules. While most artists are busy chasing hits, she's been busy designing eras. Country, pop, indie folk, synth, alt-rock. Swift didn't just reinvent herself, she built a revolving creative identity that ensures she never overstays her welcome in one genre. That's her secret weapon. By the time the world catches up, she's already evolved. She doesn't follow the trend, she becomes it. Now picture this, a young girl from Pennsylvania, strumming a guitar in her bedroom, dreaming about music that could one day move the world. By 16, she wasn't just another hopeful teen. She was a signed artist with a debut album that turned the Nashville country scene upside down. But what most people miss is that even then, she wasn't playing small. She was studying fan psychology, storytelling, branding. Every lyric felt like an open diary, but in reality, it was a masterclass in emotional marketing. The connection she built wasn't casual. It was engineered, authentic, and deeply strategic. Then came the transformation. Fearless, Speak Now, Red. Each era wasn't just an album, it was a phase in the mythology of Taylor Swift. Red, especially, was a cultural explosion. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was cinematic heartbreak, set to the soundtrack of pop country perfection. And then she dropped 9. The shift was seismic. Gone were the cowboy boots. In came crop tops, neon lights, and full pop reinvention. The critics called it risky, the audience called it genius, and the Grammys called it Album of the Year, twice. But here's where it gets almost unfair. Taylor doesn't just dominate the charts, she dominates the narrative. In a media landscape built to chew up and spit out pop stars, she's learned to weaponize every headline. Kanye interrupts her. She turns public embarrassment into global sympathy. The media calls her manipulative. She writes Reputation, dresses like a snake, and flips the insult into empowerment. Scooter Braun buys her masters. She re-records her albums, reclaims ownership, and turns the act of rebellion into a cultural moment. Tell me that's not the definition of strategic genius. But let's zoom out. How long can someone stay on top before the pedestal crumbles? That's the thing. Taylor doesn't sit on a pedestal. She builds it higher, stronger, and smarter every time it shakes. When people say her reign might end, they forget. Taylor Swift doesn't just sing. She adapts, she pivots, she reinvents. Most stars evolve because they have to. Taylor evolves because she wants to. The Eras Tour is the perfect case study. It wasn't just a concert, it was an event. A 3-hour emotional roller coaster through her musical DNA. Each era, each outfit, each set design, a visual essay in evolution. It became the highest grossing tour in history, surpassing even Elton John. But beyond the numbers, it did something more powerful. It made nostalgia feel new. It proved that reinvention doesn't erase the past, it amplifies it. That's why her reign keeps growing. She doesn't compete with others, she competes with her own shadow. And let's not ignore the empire beyond the music. Taylor Swift is now officially a billionaire. But unlike the tech titans or real estate moguls, her fortune isn't built on apps or stock trades, it's built on storytelling, ownership of her masters, royalties from songwriting, film projects, and creative control over every inch of her brand. Her business acumen rivals her artistry. She's not just an entertainer, she's a corporation wrapped in red lipstick and self-awareness. But even empires face storms, and Taylor's journey isn't spotless. She's been called overexposed, controlling, even manipulative in how she curates her image. Yet what her critics call control, her fans call boundaries. What the media calls PR, her audience calls power. Because in an industry that still underestimates women, Taylor's control isn't arrogance, it's self-defense. And that's why her reign feels bulletproof. She owns her image before anyone else can. Still, the question lingers, can this reign really last forever? Every pop icon before her, Madonna, Michael, Britney, burned bright bright, then dimmed under the weight of their own legacy. But Taylor's different because she's playing a different game. She's not fighting to stay relevant, she's fighting to stay real. She's found the formula: evolve artistically, remain emotionally consistent. The woman who once sang about teardrops on my guitar now writes essays about creative ownership, and yet somehow both versions feel authentic. That's not coincidence, that's design. Her influence has rippled far beyond music. She's reshaping industry economics. Artists are now negotiating contracts differently because of her fight over masters. She's redefining how fandom works. Her fan base, the Swifties, are not passive consumers. They're an organized, mobilized digital army. They decode lyrics, spread narratives, and protect her brand like shareholders in the House of Swift. It's wild, but it's also brilliant. Then there's her cultural positioning. Taylor Swift isn't radical in the shock value sense. She's radical in endurance. She doesn't need scandals. She uses silence as a weapon. She disappears for a year, then reemerges with Folklore and Evermore, two indie folk albums dropped during a pandemic that rewrote her entire sound. And guess what? They both debuted at #1. No marketing campaign, no scandal, just pure artistry. That's the kind of dominance that doesn't scream for attention. It earns it. Her relationships, once tabloid fodder, are now part of a larger narrative architecture. Every song, every heartbreak, every secret message has become part of the Taylorverse, an interconnected world of meaning and memory. Fans don't just listen, they investigate. They live inside the story. She's not just selling songs, she's selling mythology. And let's not forget the optics. Taylor's brand is a masterclass in contrast. Polished yet relatable, glamorous yet grounded, unreachable yet somehow, weirdly, everyone's best friend. One day she's performing for presidents, the next she's baking cookies with her cats. It's the illusion of accessibility wrapped in flawless execution. And that, dear viewers, is how you rule forever. You make people believe they know you, even when they don't. Now let's talk power in numbers. Over 500 awards, 12 Grammys, billions of streams, and a tour that redefined live performance economics. She's broken Ticketmaster. She's reshaped Billboard. She's even restructured how labels view catalog value. The Eras Tour film grossed hundreds of millions without Hollywood studios, without streaming giants. She just did it herself. Because she can. Because when Taylor Swift moves, the industry adjusts its calendar. But dominance isn't just about numbers. It's about emotional real estate. Ask anyone between ages 12 and 50, and they'll tell you there's a Taylor song that defines a chapter of their life. That's generational influence. That's cultural permanence. The kind of reign you don't overthrow, you inherit. So could it ever end? Sure. Theoretically, but how do you dethrone someone who keeps rewriting the rulebook? How do you outshine someone who's already evolved into a symbol? Taylor's not just competing for attention anymore, she's competing against time, and somehow even time seems to work in her favor. If we're being honest, the only thing that could slow her down is herself. Maybe she'll choose to step back one day, to write, to produce, to direct, to mentor. But even then, her influence will linger like perfume in the air. Because Taylor Swift isn't just in the spotlight, she is the spotlight. The rest of the industry just dances in its reflection. And let's face it, pop culture loves to predict downfall stories. We crave the fall after the rise. But Taylor's story doesn't read like a tragedy. It reads like a thesis on adaptation. Every setback becomes strategy. Every headline becomes a lyric. Every ending becomes an era. As she once sang, I can build a castle out of all the bricks they threw at me. And maybe that's the secret. Taylor's reign might never end, because it was never built on fame. It was built on control. She doesn't just ride the wave, she makes it. So would Taylor Swift's reign ever end? Maybe not. Because the thing about dynasties is they don't fall. They evolve. They multiply. They outlive the skeptics. And when the history books of pop culture are written, Taylor's name won't just be a chapter. It'll be the headline. Before you go, if you made it this far into Taylor's empire of eras, ownership, and evolution, hit that subscribe button. Not because it helps the algorithm, but because stories like this deserve to be told, analyzed, and remembered. The Swift saga isn't ending anytime soon. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Because if there's one thing history's proven, it's this. When it comes to Taylor Swift, the reign never ends.